This is the tragic case of Lisa Skidmore, a 37-year-old English nurse whose life got cut short by a man with a long crime record. Shortly after he had been released and was out on parole again, he had spent 16 years in jail for a horrific crime. Even though he warned his parole officer about his dark thoughts and urges, the system failed, and nothing was done to stop him. Please, be mindful. Lisa's story is horrific. We will be discussing SA, intrusion, and other crimes. If that is too triggering for you today, please come back for another video soon. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of them. Thanks. Now, let's get into the case. Lisa's story takes us to the heart of England, the West Midlands, a diverse and picturesque region known for its vibrant cities and beautiful countryside. It encompasses a variety of landscapes, from bustling urban centers to tranquil rural areas. The region is characterized by its green rolling hills, which provide a scenic backdrop to the many charming villages and historic towns scattered throughout. Lisa was born in the city of Wolverhampton, close to England's second-largest city, Birmingham. She was the youngest of 5 children and adored by her family. Lisa's mother describes her as one of the most honest, caring, and kind persons you could ever meet. Her sister Alison said in an interview that Lisa was an angel, kind, considerate, that she would always go the extra mile, and no one had a bad word to say about her. It is not surprising that someone with these characteristics decided to dedicate her life to helping others. Lisa qualified as a nurse in the year 2000 and became a district nurse. District nurses mostly care for their patients in their own homes rather than in the hospital. Lisa was much loved and respected by her patients and co-workers. After the news of her death broke, many heartfelt messages were posted on Facebook, and the Skidmore family was inundated with letters thanking Lisa for everything she had done for the community. And it is true, whether it's family members, friends, patients, co-workers, or neighbors, you will not hear a bad word about Lisa. She just really was a good person. As serious and dedicated Lisa was as a nurse, outside of work, she was known to be a huge Disney fan. Her favorite character was Mickey Mouse. She had visited Disneyland Paris no less than 4 times and had a big collection of Disney memorabilia. As a true collector, Lisa loved to hunt for rare collectibles on markets and fairs. Her last find was a life-size Mickey Mouse statue. Her sister Alison recalls that the statue was so big that Lisa and her sister Joyce had to put him in the back of the car with a seatbelt on to get him home. Lisa also enjoyed watching The X-Files and reading crime and science fiction novels. And last but not least, she adored children and loved to spend time with them. I bet those kids had a blast with Lisa's Disney collection. A lovely house in a quiet cul-de-sac surrounded by friendly neighbors in the small town of Bilston was the place Lisa called home. Bilston is a typical English, culturally diverse working-class town with around 30,000 residents, located about 20 minutes northwest of Birmingham. Lisa was single but content, according to her family. She was surrounded by a close-knit circle of family and friends, had a job she loved, and lived in a comfortable home where she felt safe. A peaceful, meaningful life filled with joy and love. But tragically, Lisa's peaceful life would be cut short by the hands of a dangerous predator on November 24, 2016. Lisa had called in sick at work a few days prior. She was asleep or resting in bed when Leroy Campbell placed a ladder under her bedroom window around 8:50 that morning. Just like he had done 3 days earlier, when he had staked out the neighborhood and house to prepare for his vicious attack. For Campbell, the preparation was just as enjoyable as the assault itself, disturbing as that may sound. Roaming the streets of Bilston, unable to control himself any longer, Campbell was on the hunt. When he discovered the quiet Millcroft cul-de-sac and learned that one of the houses was occupied by a single young woman, he knew he had found his next victim. Campbell climbed through the first-floor bedroom window. He knew exactly what he was doing. Not only had he meticulously planned out this attack, but he had also done this to enter the homes of at least 3 other women in the past. In fact, Campbell was on parole after completing his most recent prison sentence of 16 years for the false imprisonment and sexual assault of another young woman. Campbell, cruel as he is, has refused to share the details of what exactly occurred that morning. But if Campbell followed the playbook of his previous attacks, he found something to cover his face, like a t-shirt or a scarf, to prevent the victim to be able to identify him later. During his last attack, he had worn his victim's bathrobe and plastic gloves to minimize the transfer of DNA. He then sat down and patiently waited until the young woman woke up. It was all part of his sick ritual. In the next hour, Campbell ran and assaulted Lisa until he was done. He then made her take a shower to wash off his DNA. This followed the scenario of his previous assault. But then, he broke with his familiar MO and made Lisa lie down on her bed again, face down. Campbell kneeled on her back and strangled her. The bruises on Lisa's back illustrated the force Campbell had used to keep her down. Lisa died of asphyxia by strangulation. But the terror wasn't over yet. It gets even worse. Campbell was still in the house when Lisa's 80-year-old mother, Margaret, let herself in around 10 o'clock. She had come over to check on Lisa and see if she needed anything. Lisa was home. Sick, after all. When Margaret arrived, Campbell may have been busy placing the cans and cigarette butts that had DNA of other people on them around the house. He hid behind the kitchen door. When Margaret had entered the kitchen, Campbell punched the 80-year-old in the face multiple times, continued to throw her onto a chair, and strangled her from behind with a vacuum cleaner cord. Obsessed with destroying his DNA before fleeing the scene, Campbell set Lisa's bedroom on fire and opened the gas flow of the gas cooker in the kitchen. Soon, when the fire and gas would meet, any DNA evidence would be obliterated in the explosion. Campbell had planned out the attack in great detail, but could not have taken Margaret's visit and her survival into account. Yes, Margaret was still alive. Campbell had left her for dead when he fled the house. But she came to and was rescued by a neighbor who had seen the smoke coming out of Lisa's home. The neighbor tried to get to Lisa's bedroom, but could not reach it because of the thick smoke. The fire brigade, police, ambulances, and family were on their way. At that moment, Margaret thought that Lisa, too, had survived. Campbell had told her that Lisa was fine, saying there was no need to worry and that Lisa was merely tied up in her bedroom upstairs. God, can you imagine? A mother thinking her child may have been hurt, but is still alive. The mix of emotions, hope, and fear Margaret must have felt. In the next clip, Margaret tells us the horrific story in her own words.
He come from behind and punched me right on the cheek, and a couple more blows. I put my arm up and he hit me on the head. And I shouted, Lisa. He says, "Don't shout, Lisa." He says, "It's all right, it's upstairs." He says, "I'm a burglar." He says, "You've disturbed me." And the next thing, this orange cord come round my neck. And I tried to put them 3 fingers in, to stop him. He'd come round again, then he started pulling. 3 times he pulled, and then I must have blacked out.
Poor Margaret would soon learn the devastating truth. A truth from which she would never recover.
Well, let's just say my light's gone out. The light's gone out in my life.
Campbell, the 3 times convicted sex offender, was now a fugitive killer. The residents of Lisa's cul-de-sac were shocked and terrified. They had always felt secure in their cozy little street, but the horrific murder of their kind neighbor left them petrified in their own homes. The police launched an extensive manhunt to find the man who brutally raped and murdered Lisa and nearly killed her 80-year-old mother as well. But Campbell was long gone. After initially returning to his probation hostel in Moseley, Birmingham, he soon fled to his sister's home. There, he eventually confessed his horrific crime to her. 3 days after murdering Lisa and leaving Margaret for dead, Leroy Campbell turned himself in. Lisa's tragic death was a devastating blow for her family, friends, co-workers, and patients. A bright, warm light had been smothered and left a dark void in their lives. Campbell kept taunting Lisa's loved ones by requesting a second post-mortem examination, which meant that Lisa's funeral was delayed until shortly before Campbell's trial started in May 2017. During the police investigation, more details surfaced. Not only did Campbell have a dark past, having assaulted at least 3 other women, But there was also a shocking revelation. Campbell had been released back into society only a few months prior. He had warned his parole officer and the police that he felt the urge to reoffend. He admitted struggling to control his impulses to rape another woman. Despite this alarming confession, neither Probation Services nor the police took any action to stop him. How on earth could this happen? Let's take a look at Campbell. I would rather not give him the time of day. But to understand, or at least try to understand, how it all got to this, we must. Leroy Campbell, 55 at the time of Lisa's murder, was born in Birmingham. He was the son of Jamaican immigrants, a seemingly normal, financially comfortably off family. However, Campbell claimed to have been abused by a relative for an extensive amount of time. The vast majority of people who have suffered from abuse do not go on to abuse other people themselves, and even less so, turn into murderers. But, according to forensic psychiatrist Dr. Hannah Jones, it is common for people who do commit horrific crimes like Campbell to have been subjected to trauma and abuse themselves. Campbell fathers 2 children before he reaches the age of 20. The relationship with the mother of his children strands when Campbell commits his first offense in 1983. He had broken into the home of a young woman, coincidentally also a nurse. Campbell tried to choke the woman with the intent to rape her. He is arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison, longer than the 5 years usually given for rape, indicating that the assault must have been incredibly violent. But, after serving just half his sentence, Campbell is released from jail. In 1991, Campbell is arrested for his next horrific assault. Well, the next assault police can prove and charge him for. Police suspected him in many more assaults in the late 1980s, but there was never enough evidence to charge him. The offense Campbell commits in July 1991 is even more horrific. Once more, Campbell broke into a house by climbing through a window. He finds the woman asleep with her 5-year-old child. He disguises himself by placing a t-shirt over his head and wears rubber gloves. Campbell repeatedly rapes the woman, threatening her with a knife, while her 5-year-old son is present in the home. Police arrest Campbell on the same day. Campbell pleads guilty during his 1992 trial and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. During the 6 years he serves before he is released again in 1998, Campbell participates in extensive rehabilitation programs. He convinces the parole board that his risk of reoffending can be managed in freedom, and he is let go. Unbelievably, Probation Services loses touch with him about 7 months after his release. Meanwhile, Campbell is back on the hunt for his next victim. Early 1999, Campbell once again breaks into a home through a ground floor window. The only person present in the house is a young French au pair. While the girl is asleep on the sofa, Campbell quietly goes upstairs. He pulls a stocking over his head and puts on the girl's bathrobe. Back downstairs, he finds a knife, sits down and patiently waits for the girl to wake up. When she does, he drags her upstairs and assaults her. Afterwards, he forces the young woman into the shower to wash away his DNA. We will never know what his next plans were for the young woman, because, thankfully, she manages to escape the house. Campbell knows he is in deep trouble and flees to Jamaica. Meanwhile, Probation Services in England have still not been able to get in touch with Campbell. In breach of his parole license, a warrant for his arrest is being issued. When Campbell returns to England a year later, he is welcomed by police and arrested for the attempted and false imprisonment of the young French au pair. This time, he receives an indefinite sentence with a minimum of 5 years. Between 2000 and 2005, Campbell is imprisoned in Level A prisons in Manchester and Wakefield. Level A prisons are high-security prisons, housing male offenders who would pose a high risk to the public if they were to escape. Campbell is classed a Level 3 offender, the highest possible level. After 3 offenses, Campbell finally seems to be where he belongs, locked away from the public. But, of course, as we know, this is not how it ends. During his time in prison, Campbell, again, participates in various rehabilitation programs, progressing through the various levels of the prison system. Between 2000 and 2009, he is denied parole on 3 occasions. His 4th request in 2009 is denied as well. However, the parole board does decide to move him to a level B, or therapeutic prison. He moved to HMP Dovegate in 2011. There, Campbell is being subjected to almost round-the-clock therapy. After 3 years, he progresses to level D, or open prison, HMP North Sea Camp, in preparation for release into society. The point of an open prison is to get prisoners used to conditions they'll face in the community. While at the open prison, Campbell and 4 other prisoners moved to an independent house within the prison grounds. Another part of the program includes temporary releases, with escorted and later unescorted visits into town and meetings with friends and family. Between October 2015 and May 2016, Campbell had 5 unescorted visits with his family, during which he saw his adult son and daughter and his 11-year-old grandson. They had stayed in touch throughout his sentence. In 2015, Campbell's 5th parole request was approved. However, for unknown reasons, the mandatory final risk assessment was not conducted. Consequently, despite his horrific prior offenses, Campbell was released classified at the lowest possible risk level, Level 1, matching the security level of his open prison. Had he undergone reassessment, he likely would have been classified as a Level 3 risk, the highest level, subject to close monitoring by multiple agencies. In July 2016, Campbell was, once again, released into society, with only the oversight of Probation Services to protect the public, a monumental error with catastrophic consequences. As part of his parole license, Campbell is released into a probation hostel in Bilston. These facilities, now known as approved premises, are residential units that house ex-offenders within the community. The Bilston Probation Hostel is located less than half a mile from Lisa's home, about a 5-minute walk. Campbell initially does well in Bilston and is soon permitted to move to a less restrictive hostel in Moseley, Birmingham, about 19 miles away, to be closer to his family. He makes a positive start in Moseley, cooperating with his parole officer and attending his scheduled meetings. But soon, his psychological state starts to deteriorate, and it was later discovered that he regularly returned to Bilston. In hindsight, we know that he was most likely on the hunt for his next victim. 3 months after his release, on October 17th, Campbell attends a meeting with Probation Services. His regular probation officer is on vacation. Campbell meets with a replacement officer and expresses his struggles and explicitly states he is worried that he will somebody again. The replacement officer, not as familiar with the case, gives Campbell some phone numbers of support groups. Campbell's confession about his dark thoughts were not recorded in the meeting notes. I mean, God, to be fair. Campbell was desperately reaching out. He even repeats his worries and struggles on various occasions. And not only to the replacement probation officer, their supervisor, and the police too, disregarded Campbell's warnings. His regular probation officer, who had been on holiday, testified later that he was not informed of Campbell's negative thoughts on his return. Of course, the proper action would have been to send him back to the more restrictive hostel in Bilston, or even prison, and be reassessed. But that did not happen. Both Probation Services and police did nothing to protect the public against this dangerous man. 5 weeks later, Lisa pays the price for their incompetence, with her life. If you ever need an example of a totally preventable murder, remember the name Lisa Skidmore. Shortly before the start of Campbell's trial, Lisa's family was finally able to bury her. Approximately 300 people attended the funeral. A senior doctor flew in from Italy, and another traveled from Wales. 100 nurses lined up to honor their slain sister, releasing 100 Mickey Mouse balloons in an emotional tribute to the quiet, caring, and wonderful woman Lisa was. The young woman who had dedicated her life to helping and caring for others, often working more hours than scheduled. The devoted daughter who cared for her elderly mother. The compassionate nurse who dreamed of one day opening her own nursing home to offer the best possible care to our seniors. Lisa embodied innocence and compassion. Campbell was expected to plead not guilty, but changed his mind on the first day of his trial. He pled guilty to the murder and rape of Lisa Skidmore, the attempted murder of her mother and arson with intent to endanger life. His defense team did inform the court of Campbell's defense for his horrific crimes. According to Campbell, he was paranoid schizophrenic. It is unknown if this is true. Probation Services claims to have never received any information about such diagnosis. But regardless, the judge did not buy it. In his sentencing on May 12, 2017, the judge said, quote, "Despite your medical condition, you are capable of planning the most serious criminal offenses and carrying those plans through with ruthless efficiency. You have done so again and again, and your behavior is becoming more abhorrent and sophisticated with time. I cannot hold back from passing a whole life sentence." End quote. Campbell will spend the rest of his life in prison, where he belongs. His only ever small chance of release would be for compassionate reasons such as a terminal illness or very old age. The public outcry during the police investigation and trial was immense. Upon learning the tragic details of the failing parole system, Lisa's family was, if at all possible, even more devastated. They demanded answers. The whole country demanded answers. How could a 3-time convicted dangerous predator like Leroy Campbell have been granted parole, only to rape and kill less than 4 months after his release? Why did nobody listen to his warnings? Campbell is a dangerous, sick man, but he did reach out for help. The parole system that should have protected Lisa had catastrophically failed, leaving Campbell free to rape and kill Lisa, strangle her mother, and destroy a once happy family. Of course, the country demanded answers and measures to prevent tragedies like Lisa's to ever happen again.
He shouldn't have just been left back out in the community, to roam and to do whatever he wanted to do. He should have either been back in approved premises or recalled back to prison.
The system has been held accountable. In the years since Lisa's death, reviews and inquests of the case, Probation Services and police have been conducted. The outcomes of these were unanimous. The case was grossly mishandled, and Lisa's rape and murder and the attack on her mother would have been totally preventable if Probation Services and police would have taken the correct actions. The reviews resulted in many improvements to the probation system as a whole. An independent review by the Inspectorate of Probation of the case and how it was handled by Probation Services was completed in September 2018. The report listed the many identified shortcomings in Campbell's probation case. It listed learning points and mentions that action plans were underway, and a review of Probation Services as a whole was promised. The review also included thorough examination of the work of 4 responsible probation employees. When the report was published, 2 of these employees were suspended, and disciplinary proceedings were underway. A few months after the publication of the report, Campbell's probation officer was demoted to an administrative role. His supervisor, the senior probation officer, was fired. Thanks to Lisa's family, the system has been held accountable. Even Prime Minister Theresa May had to answer questions in Parliament. Member of Parliament Mr. Pat McFadden addressed Lisa's case after the publication of the Review of Probation Services in 2018.
Lisa Skidmore was a young woman with her whole life in front of her. Her family have been left completely heartbroken by her loss. She was let down in the most appalling way by a service which is there to monitor offenders and to protect the public, and in this case failed to do so with the most devastating consequences. Can I ask the Prime Minister, what can she and the Ministry of Justice do in response to this report to prevent something like this happening again?
I say to the Honourable Gentleman that he has raised what was an absolutely devastating case. It was a horrific crime and devastating for Lisa's family. And I understand that my honourable friend, the Prisons Minister, has met the family of Lisa Skidmore, has apologised for the failings in this case. But as the honourable gentleman says, this should not have happened. I understand some action has already been taken, that 2 members of the Probation Service have been suspended, but while nothing can be done to bring back Lisa or to minimise the impact that this has had on her family, Dame Glenys Stacey has been asked to conduct an independent review to look at what can be done to prevent such tragedies from happening again.
Probation Services and police have personally and publicly apologized to the Skidmore family for their tragic failure. Executive Director Probation and Women, Sonia Crozier, wrote the family a letter in which she expressed her shame. Quote, "After 30 years of working for the Probation Service, where I have often felt proud of what the service has done, I now feel deeply ashamed of its failings in the management of Leroy Campbell. I can only reassure that your dignified determination made a deep impression on me, and it will leave a lasting legacy on how the National Probation Service manages offenders, supervises its staff to account for their actions." End quote. Chief Constable Dave Thompson, in 2017, the West Midlands' most senior officer, apologized in person and publicly to Lisa's family. He said, quote, "I want to say to you, I am sorry we as West Midlands Police failed to protect your family. I am deeply sorry." End quote. Prisons and Probation Minister Rory Stewart met with Lisa's family to personally apologize for the failings and assured them, quote, "that we change our training, assessments, and staff management." End quote. Of course, none of this will bring Lisa back. No report or apology will heal Lisa's loved ones. She should not have died for these changes to be made. She should have been protected. Despite their grief, Lisa's family has always kept pushing for all involved organizations to take accountability. They did not rest until the system reviewed and improved itself. And, on top of all this, the family started a fundraiser in Lisa's name. They combined Lisa's love for children and Disney and raised £7,000, or just short of $9,000, to send children that were affected by crime to Disneyland Paris. A trip to the happiest place on earth to help them build happy memories on their road to recovery. I think this initiative would have made Lisa super proud. The trips to Disneyland were organized by the wonderful charity Embrace. They are still active and provide emotional and practical support to children and their families to help them heal. And they still organize trips to amusement parks. I will add a link to the Embrace website in the description box for anybody who would like to donate. Thank you so much for listening to Lisa's story. It truly means a lot to me that you spent some of your precious time to learn about this remarkable young lady. Hug your loved ones or call someone who needs to hear your voice. We never know what life has in store for us, and it can all change in a heartbeat. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and please be safe. If you liked this video, please give it a like. It would be amazing if you subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you will not miss any of my videos. Thank you. All right. Over and out. Bye.
When life gets heavy, I get light as a feather, changing my mind.